Hello, clever people, and welcome to my review for Beauty and the Beast. So this is, I believe, the 18th or 19th rendition of this story on screen. Beauty and the Beast is a story that's been told from back in 1931, 1946, and now the most modern day version of it, the animated version, which came out in 1991. They decided, hey, we want some money, a lot of it, so they decided to make a remake of the original classic, which I own on DVD right here. I might get the Blu-ray one day. I like that film. I enjoy it quite a bit. I just don't think it's amazing or fantastic. It has a lot of good aspects to it, but to me, I just sort of find it very disposable. But this new one I was excited for, because the last few Disney installments have been really, really good. You had Cinderella, which I really liked. You had the Jungle Book, which I really liked. Beyond that, you had some mediocre ones that were okay. But besides that, Disney have been making their live-action versions pretty good up to this point. So they decided that they would tell the tale that everyone loves, Beauty and the Beast. The first few trailers came out and they, to me, looked sort of disposable like the first film. But I went into this film pretty excited. There was a packed theater because, it made $170 million this weekend, which is understandable. And I have to say that Beauty and the Beast is a film I liked quite a bit. It's a good movie, it's definitely enjoyable, and it's got a lot of good aspects to it. By far the best is that the way it combines the old with the new. They have a lot of new stuff in it. It's about 2 hours and 2 minutes, where the last one was 1 hour and 30 minutes. This one, though, it feels, at times it feels a bit more clean and polished. At others, it doesn't. But I really like how they incorporated the new things. Well, you could also tell that you were watching sort of a remake, yet at the same time, none of it felt overdone. You didn't feel like you were watching the same movie. I thought that would be an interesting test because I watched this right before I went into the theater. So having it fresh on my mind, I was hoping that I wouldn't feel like I was watching the same movie and going through the same story again. And I didn't. They had enough new things in here to make it interesting, and enough old things to have the sentimentality of the old one. Now, by far, the best part of this film, everyone said it. People are saying that it's a lock for the Oscars. It's hard to argue with that. The aesthetic, the sets, and the costumes, they're all just fantastic. It's a fantasy world, and it looks like a fantasy world, and at the same time, it's sort of got that innocence to it. They combine those two really well, and make for this just stunning aesthetic for when they're out in the cold. It's got a lot of, light and dark blues. When you're in the houses, they've got, the red look to it, the red, orange, yellow. It's had a really good aesthetic. The sets, too, looked very authentic, very real. The costumes were just absolutely fantastic. And it honestly wouldn't be surprising if, by Oscar time comes, that this was nominated and maybe even won for Best Production Design, for Best Costume Design, and for Best Hair and Makeup. They also incorporate a lot of jokes into this movie, like the original. A lot of the jokes hit, a lot of them don't. I'd say it's about a 50-50 split. For the ones that do hit, they were really funny and they got a huge laugh out of my theater. For the other ones, they weren't as funny and they just sort of felt dull and sort of took away from the movie. A very good aspect to this movie was definitely the utensils. The CGI on them was very, very good. They looked realistic enough so that you didn't feel like you were watching just, a candlestick walking around. But it looked very real for what they were. The clock and the candle, everything like that. They looked like what they were, yet at the same time you could still tell the human attributes to them. When the first photos came out, I was a bit mixed on the utensils because, just looking at the clock, Cogsworth, it looked like he didn't have a face, and I thought that would be a huge concern, that they would go too detailed into that and takes away from the whimsical, magical part of this movie, but it absolutely didn't, and the utensils looked great. And also the voice acting from them was also very, very good. At times I couldn't even tell who was voicing who. I knew that Ian McKellen was doing the candlestick, Lumiere, but at the same time, I was sort of mixed on it. I'm like, is that Ian McKellen? Is that someone else? A lot of the voice acting, they blended in with the characters, and they fit it very, very well. And of course, a lot of people are going to say this about the movie, but it's very entertaining, especially in the last, I'd say, second act, especially the second act, just that whole area, was extremely entertaining. However, why I left out the first act and the third act, there's good reasons for that. Because at first, this movie had a bit of hard time finding its footing. I thought at first that it wasn't really as immersive or entertaining as I was hoping it would be. I love my favorite fantasy films like Lord of the Rings and other ones like that. I love those because while the aesthetics are good and the sets are good and costumes and all, what's really great about them is how immersive they are, how you feel like you're being transported to there. And you can have a fantasy film with tons of beautiful sets and aesthetics, and if the immersive, part of the movie, if it doesn't feel like you're actually there, it doesn't really work out too well. Beauty and the Beast struggles with this for the first half of the movie. In the second half, it gets better more onto the end, which I'll touch on later. But at times it has a hard time, becoming the immersive, entertaining experience that you hope for it to be. This sort of made the first act of it a bit dull and quite, unmemorable. The movie also runs a bit long. The third act is just a bit too long. The movie, again, I said 2 hours and 2 minutes, and it's not like you can pinpoint something exactly and saying that did not need to be in there. That can be taken out. Because I did say they did incorporate a lot of old and new really, really well, yet at the same time, it felt like they had certain things go on for too long, certain things go for too short, and because of that, the movie feels like it's over long. A 2-hour Beauty and the Beast can work, but it works best if they have it so that the parts that should stay short, and the parts that should stay long. It has a hard time with this, and sometimes they'll go over things way too quickly. The first one struggled with their romance. It struggled with the romance in the film and the fact that it just sort of blossomed really quickly. And the film has the same issue. The romance just kind of blossoms really quickly and it doesn't really feel quite realistic. A lot of this happens with a lot of the other things in the movie. I think that maybe a 2-hour of the Beauty and the Beast can work. However, this version I do think just should have been cut down to 1 hour and 40 minutes or 1 hour and 30 because it just goes on for a bit too long, and at a certain point in the movie you just sort of stop caring about what's going on. And my final point I'd like to bring up is the overacting. It's not overly abundant, it's not there a whole ton, but when it's there you can definitely tell it's there. Emma Watson definitely struggles with this. At times, she overacts to a bad degree, where she just says things so animatedly and says them so overactingly, and it just is really annoying and it sort of pegs down the film. There are some very inspired casting choices in this film, like Josh Gad and Luke Evans. They were both really good as Gaston and, I'm forgetting the other character's name. But they were both really good, and there was quite a bit of voice acting that felt inspired. But the rest of it just sort of felt there. Like, Emma Watson and whoever played the Beast, I'm forgetting his name now, they just sort of felt uninspired. I think that Emma Watson was a good Belle. At times she just overacted, and at times felt a bit too uninspired. With that being said, I do think I enjoyed Beauty and the Beast quite a bit. It's a very entertaining film. It has some very good aspects to it. The voice acting, the utensils, and absolutely the aesthetic to it is great. It has its flaws and it has its weak points. And for a while, I was preparing to give this about a 7 out of 10. But it's really the very first part of it and the very end of it that mess it up. And that is why I will give Beauty and the Beast a 6.5 out of 10. Alright, that concludes my review for Beauty and the Beast. What are your thoughts on this film? Comment in the comment section below, and let me know. I am Robert Burke, and this has been The Clever Critics. Goodbye.